horn works. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Man, we are having technical difficulties today, but you know what? We are still here. We are present and accounted for. And some days that's just how it is. You know, you got to roll with the punches. And sometimes, you know, you get a black eye and a busted lip. But you know what? You keep standing and you fight, you take the blows. And here we are. But you know what time it is? It is tipping points and puzzle pieces. We're only 33 minutes late, but you know what? We're here, and that's the important part. So, without further ado, because I don't want to hold you back any longer, many of you have been jonesing, going through withdrawals from Mark Boatwright Frost. So let me get him up right now. Mark, how you doing?
Pretty good. I am amused each week by my introduction.
Well, you know, people are they have been socialized and programmed to expect to see your face at 1 p.m. every Wednesday. So when they don't see it, you know, things start going off the rails.
Well,
So, you know,
someone's freebasing out there is all I got to say.
so with that, I will ask you how you're doing because I will tell the audience how I'm doing later.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Um, it's January, man. For nonprofits. January is the month where it either all hits the fan at the same time and leaves a holy mess on the wall, or you just dig in and get everything done because you got taxes, you got paperwork, you've got. I just finished redoing my Guide Star certification for gold level Guide Star for transparency for nonprofits,
Mhm.
and now they want me to do platinum. And I said, dude, I don't do $1 billion a year. Platinum is kind of like out of my league. It's not that we have to pay for it, but there's a level of paperwork you have to do that is just beyond a small nonprofit.
Yeah, you need a department just to complete those tasks.
Yeah,
And some
and
of those things we've just left, you know, withering on the vine because there's just no time to get to it.
the beauty is that Terry, who's a board member and my partner, is a bookkeeper accountant, so she can do a lot of the stuff for me, but the majority I end up doing, and so January becomes the month of paperwork for me.
Well, you know, like I've been saying for the last few weeks, we have not had a January like this. So it is pedal to the metal. There's another phrase. I won't use that one because this is a family friendly show, but it has been something else. But with all things considered, still very blessed and honored to be able to serve the community. And at the end of the day, that is
Yep,
what's important. So you got to take the lumps to get to the
exactly
good part.
so. And hopefully after this, actually January is also the time of year that I work heavily on doing the update for 2022 and talk about what we've done. It will be out a couple weeks late. It'll probably be mid-February before I'm completed with it because of everything else. But everyone should look for that because it will tell you what the resilient ecosystems and the Kitsap Resiliency Project have been doing for the last year and what we expect to do this year.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Well, are you ready to get started?
I am.
All right. So let me go ahead. Sought by many, held by few, wanted by all. This week, we talk about power. We talk about what is and what will need to be. We will talk about utility, industry, and meeting needs. We will explore supply and demand and ask if growing demand will outstrip the supply again. We will talk security and reality, profit and service, and look at why we so easily accept what is given when a better solution exists.
So, of course, that I drive for G2. Everything. I hope everybody here knows that I drive for G2, which is Marwan's organization. And I end up having some very interesting conversations. And I want to start this show by talking about a conversation I had last night with a gentleman who was eminent in putting in a lot of the roads in Kitsap County. And so I in 19 late 60s, early 70s, Walter Cronkite had a show called The 21st Century, which projected into the future of what we would be looking at. And one of the things that caught my imagination and longing, and for 40 some odd years I have been longing for this, was the concept of a pod car. It's basically a car that's like, but their concept was four wheels on a base with a dome over the top of it. And you would go sit in there, you would program in where you wanted to go. The car would drive out of the garage, and you would be, reading a book, doing whatever. It would join up with a train of other cars going along, and then it would pull off and then park. And you never had to touch a wheel, never had to drive, never had to pay attention to somebody who thought that they were entitled, or some entitled person who thought they were skilled but really were riding on luck, and luck only goes so far. I saw that happen yesterday, as a matter of fact, that somebody's luck ran out.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, but
Are we getting there right with the Teslas? I mean,
well,
they're
okay. So Teslas are the electric, an electric car. Google has this whole concept of GPS, satellite-based GPS, self-drive cars. Interesting concept. From everything that I've read, satellite GPS is really good most of the time, but you have a plus or minus of 2 meters. Think about that on the road. If you're 2 meters in the wrong place, you could be head on with a semi.
excuse me, but for us elitist Americans, how many feet or meters?
3 feet, basically, a meter is roughly a yard plus 3 inches.
What?
So you're talking
uh,
6 feet and a bit.
thank you.
So 6 feet and a bit while you're driving is a lot. So when you think about that, but here's the thing: back in the 70s and 60s, they were talking about driving by wire, putting a wire down the middle of the road, and basically everything in your car tags to that wire, and that wire will tell the car where it is in
Wow.
relation. I asked this guy who built the roads, and getting back to him, I said, how hard would it be to drop a cable in the center of the road? And he said, not hard at all. You'd cut a groove in the middle of the road. You could do it fairly quickly. You could run cables all through all the roads, and we could have been driving by wire because we had the technology in the 70s and 80s. We could
Really?
have laid wires in the roads of all of the roads, and we could have had self-driving cars 2 decades ago.
Hmm.
And the computing has only gotten better. But here we are focused on satellite connection when we could have just put it in the road. And when we built the roadways, we could have put it in the road.
Interesting.
So think about that in the form of public transportation. So you've got public transportation as buses and cabs and drivers separately. But wouldn't this be a hybrid of public transportation and meeting your personal needs? Because essentially it connects out. Um, well, Michael, there would be options for that. It's not an
That
either
was just
or
going through
light
my
switch.
mind.
Yeah, well, the thing
Thank
is,
you.
it's not a light switch. It's never a light switch. It's a process. And you could have an entire lane that is just self-driving cars, and the other lanes are for people who want to drive and drive their cars. I mean, there isn't an either or, and people always go there. Oh, well, you're going to force me to give my car up? No, we're just giving more options. This is a hybrid of public transportation. Essentially, you get into your pod car, you plug in the data you want to do, you pick up your book, you do your laptop, you do your work, and the car links up with a train of cars and then takes you where you need to be. It wouldn't be that hard. The reason we haven't had it is because we don't have public will for it.
I don't think people know about it. Like this is the
No.
first I've heard about it. I think I've seen it in a cartoon or something, but other than
Um,
that,
so Michael says, but when we get into the conflict of having enough room, I'm not against it. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Well, I know you are, Michael. That's your job. Um,
well, yeah, my pod car is going to have to be an XXL for sure.
Well, and the whole thing is that the concept's been around for a long time, but industry okay. We are still buying 100-year old technology with different paint jobs and different fenders and different shapes. We're still driving an internal combustion car, and that's because that's what they can sell. They can make money on that. They don't have to invest in R&D. As long as we have a capitalistic system where money is God and innovation is, well, we'll get to it if it doesn't uh, take away from the bottom line and from shareholder profits. And there's a lot of things we could be doing. There's all kinds of things we could have today, but we accept what we're given. Yeah, public transport. I'm a big fan of public transportation. I came up to Washington the first time in 1992 on my honeymoon, and I drove in Seattle for pretty much the first and the last time ever. I try and stay out of Seattle at all costs. I do not want to drive my car in Seattle. I don't want to drive around Seattle. I don't want to drive through that weird interchange overpass thing that they've got going on in City Center. And so I take public transportation and walk when I'm in Seattle. I take buses, I take cabs. I don't drive in Seattle because to me it's just too crazy making. Um, and I could have a really good day in Seattle and then I have to drive out, and I will tell you that it can ruin the whole day for me.
It used to be fun. I used to like driving in Seattle, but yeah, not so much now. It's so over congested at this point.
It's over congested and people are all trying to get where they're going and they're frustrated and driving kind of crazy. Plus, the streets in Seattle are a little hard to drive on. Uh, yeah,
Oh, especially downtown. Downtown, even as a kid, you had a clutch and you're trying to take those hills and
good
learn
luck.
how to just get it just right because you can't rock back and you got the rain and yeah, it's crazy in Seattle.
And so I walk when I'm in Seattle. And so I take the ferry. I walk over to one of the buildings. I take the elevator up to the next floor, walk out, go across the street, take the escalator up, go
Oh,
across the
the
street.
trick shortcut.
Oh God, yes. And so I go. I can get all the way up to the through the library. I can get all the way up to pretty much Sixth without ever having to walk up the hill.
Yeah, that was the cheat.
Yeah. So I like going to Seattle. Not to knock Kitsap County. But I do want to say something about Kitsap County. One of my things about Kitsap County is there seems to be an attitude here of, well, it's just Kitsap County. We should accept it as being just Kitsap County. And I want to just say that's a whole lot of horse manure. Just because you live in Kitsap County doesn't mean you have to accept the worst or the cast off. You can decide to have better. That's entirely up to you. Which brings me back to the original statement I had, is that we could have had self-driving cars 20, 30 years ago if we had the willpower. And yeah, right, nobody knows about it, but it behooves corporations not to have people know about it. And we've had a lot of concept cars. Now, here's one for you. I was at a car show. Actually, I was at an innovation show. Want to say 92, 93. No, it was a little later than that. It was in mid 90s. And Dodge brought out, I want to say it's an EX model. It was a concept car. It was basically a Dodge Intrepid frame with a hybrid diesel motor in it.
Okay.
It got 75 miles to the gallon.
Oh, wow.
It came out as a concept car. This is in the 90s. Came out as a concept car, vanished just as fast, never to be seen again. They show these concepts of what we could do, and then they just said, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep the gas guzzlers out there. We're going to make you pay through the nose at the tank. Um, and, there you are. And it's not that I don't understand why they do it. And I understand that it's not evil. It's that they're a machine and this is how they think, that it's all about bottom line, all about profit. all about shareholder dividends. I get it. I mean, and that's not evil. It's just the way we've let things be. But as long as we continue to focus on that, humanity and the human needs will never get met. So now let's switch to power. I have a lot of sorry, over here, small words up here, and I just kind of want to highlight some of what they are. Between 2015 and 2020, power outages in the United States have doubled.
Mm.
That's not including Texas during the winter last year or the year before, actually last year and the year before last. Um, that 26% of U.S. households are 100% electric, and
How many?
26%, one in four, are 100% electric. Now, there's a whole bunch more that are hybrid. You know, every house has got electricity, but like our house has gas heat. So
Mhm.
we're not completely dependent on electricity. But let's say there's 26% of the people in Kitsap County are 100% electric homes, especially with all the new homes being built. And let's say that we have a massive power outage in the middle of winter. That means, let's see, 300,000 people, somewhere around 60,000 people are going to be cold.
Let me ask a stupid question. Why, if we have the technology, do we not just build our new construction with solar panels? It's like, hey, a roof has to go on a house. Solar panels are going in. It's standard.
Interesting question. And I think that they should be. And that's part of what we're going to be getting to is why they're not.
Mhm.
I will tell you that I was at an emergency management meeting about 6 years ago. And well, yes, Michael, but that's a short
Hmm.
answer. There's a longer answer that needs to be said. He put up dollar signs.
I saw it.
Um, so I was in an emergency management meeting, and we were talking about the readiness of the county, and there were a lot of people there, including PSE. And I asked the people at PSE about renewable energy and microgrids, and they said, "Oh, the technology's not mature enough." This is 7 years ago. Now, we all remember this, or might or might not remember the tsunami that happened in Indonesia, and where it basically wiped out a nuclear power plant in Japan, in Fukushima, and where essentially it's still down. And there was a lot of radioactive soil. There's a lot of things going on about that. We could talk about it at a different time. Um, but Germany looked at that and went, yeah, no, this isn't happening here. And they voted to go off of nuclear. And so they basically doubled down on renewable energy in 2011. And they are now running somewhere between 60 and 85% of their country on renewables. And they're building microgrids. They're building the solar on all the roofs. They are incenting farmers to run wind turbines to generate it, and they've got a distributed grid being built, and they've done an amazing job in just 12 years. So mature enough. I think that is more of a statement about we don't want to invest in it. Is that a fair statement, Marwan?
Yeah, I'm with the dollar sign with Michael, and I know that it is more than that, but man, I mean, we've got to change some things. I was watching a few YouTubes the other day on some historians. They're a lot younger, right? They don't have all the gray hair and the balding, and they're prognosticating on the future and how this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and some of the things they were wrong about, and it was upsetting a little bit because PBS was the one that was calling out, the times where this gentleman was wrong, but there were so many times when he was right, and even though he didn't say he didn't get right that we were going to fall off the cliff in 2012. We were moving so much closer to the ledge that it was still alarming. Like,
Hmm.
okay, we didn't fall off at 2012, but man, we're at the point of no return. We've got to do something, and no one's listening.
Yeah,
It's
I get that.
frustrating.
I actually get that on my Facebook page. There's a gentleman that I've actively tried to block, and I don't block very many people. But this guy is such hardcore anti. everything that is not common today. I put up something about solar panels. He will send me a thousand articles about why nuclear power is the way to go. And then I send him back a link saying from John Oliver saying, "Yeah, let's talk about the waste and the fact that we can't do anything with it, and that we have no storage facility in the waste for nuclear waste. And nuclear waste lasts for multiple thousands of years. So you want to say it's a clean energy, yes, but it has a waste product that we can't do anything with. And we have in Washington state the worst example of nuclear power ever in the history of the US's efforts in nuclear power. Hanford, I think it's affectionately called Oops,
Wow.
um, is leaking nuclear. They've spent billions and billions of dollars on cleanup. They've spent $1 billion on paying people for the health issues that have happened. Um, it's it could never make as much money as they have spent trying to rectify the situation.
You know,
So
I was just typing in the chat and, kind of a response to Michael's comment, true about um, the solar panels, are they better? But the components and the way that they're mined and recycled. And I was just learning about the cobalt and, one, how is that mined, typically in Africa and using child labor and all those things, and then not giving Africa what it's actually worth, right? In exchange. But then the fact that all these resources are finite. So are you actually going to be able to provide enough electric cars for everyone? And then we want new cars all the time and all those issues. And then even with electric cars, how are you going to charge the electric cars? They need electricity at the charging station to charge the cars. So what do you do about that?
well, exactly so. And as I say, this is why it can't be a light switch. You can't just say
Mhm.
we're all going to do this. It has to be it has to be planned out and it has to be transitional. I agree with that part of it, but we have to get started. And a lot of these questions are basically thrown out there by people who don't want to start because it will cost them money. Now, it's true. I'm not arguing the fact that lithium ion is lithium is mined in Africa. Congo, I believe, is one of the main places. And all of the things you just mentioned are a big problem. But they're looking at and copper is also kind of an issue these days. But they're looking at various different types of battery storage situations. And I keep coming back to for microgrids, for communities where you've got some space, saltwater batteries work, and they're saltwater. I mean, it's something we can, we have a fair amount of, and we don't have to mine it from any place. But yes, there are components in the solar panels. But one of the things that we can do to resolve a lot of these issues is we could start, doing something like, recycling, which
Hmm.
we really don't do. I mean, one of these days when I have time to actually go through and dig up the research I have to do on it, we will have a show on recycling and on waste. And to be ready to lose your lunch because it's horrific.
Well, I'm gonna turn my camera off because I know I'm one of the chief offenders. I went
Well,
through a
even if you did recycle, we don't recycle. I'm not talking about personal recycling. I'm talking about what waste management
no,
does.
no, 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 and I'm with you there, but there still should be the habit, right? I
Yep,
remember when it first came online and they forced us to recycle, which we had to be forced to. I definitely had to be forced to, and for a while, once it finally caught on, and it took years,
it did
um, I was
because it's
really good
change.
about recycling, but now, you know,
Because we don't have, I mean, I don't have recycle bins here. I don't have the option.
so I do,
Yeah.
and I do recycle, like, I mean, if they're bags and boxes and things like that, the easy things to recycle, let's say, but I'm not diligent about always recycling cans, they go into the regular garbage. I shouldn't admit this on air. It's true. I'm a horrible recycler. So, I mean, even if we got the where the stuff is actually going, and a lot of it's going in Africa too, and into our oceans,
And Asia.
I need to be retrained on that, right?
Yeah.
But then it's hard to say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna recycle when I know it's not going
Well,
anywhere anyway. Michael
somewhere,
says, go ahead. You want to read Michael's statement there?
yeah. I once lived in a place that had separate trash and recycling bins. They would empty into the same truck. Exactly so. I mean, that's exactly what I was saying. Is that it's kind of a scam. There's a company that I worked with several years ago. Um, God, I'm going to blank on their name right now, but they were making OSB plywood replacements using milk and juice cartons, and they could not get milk and juice cartons recycled material in the United States. They had to bring it in from Canada because we didn't have it, which tells me that how many people, I mean, Michael, you're a father. How many juice cartons do you go through? How many milk cartons do you go through? And now we can't recycle milk cartons at all because China refuses to accept them anymore because our recycling isn't done here, which might provide jobs, industry, opportunity, and all kinds of other things. We ship it to China and we accept it that
Wait,
that's
wait,
the
say that
case.
again. So what, the gallon milk cartons or the half
The
gallon?
no, the plastic the wax paper cartons, the new that they have soups in now, that they have
Yeah,
yeah, and then juice boxes, all
yeah.
of that they were turning into a product that replaced OSB plywood and was actually really cool. Um,
Really?
and I've got some samples here I can show you at some point.
It
Um,
was durable as plywood and not,
it was durable, as strong. It actually had yes, half gallons. It is natively mold and water resistant, so it would be perfect in bathrooms. As opposed to the green wall. There was a lot of cool things, and they could not coat the outside of it, and you could actually use dry erase markers on it.
really?
Yes, they actually have a restaurant
Wow.
in Mississippi, I think. Yeah, I think it was Mississippi that has an entire wall of the rewall materials, and they use it for writing their menus on.
And so China was doing that recycling and now they're not doing it?
Well, they do most all of our recycling, and they are now saying that they don't want the milk and juice cartons. And Rewall wasn't able to get the material from anywhere in the U.S., so they had to import it from Canada, which does recycling within country. Excuse me.
Do you know why China doesn't want to?
Don't know for sure, but that was the thing that came out from to Waste Management about a year ago. They can no longer take juice and milk. Oh, too many contaminants in the materials, so they don't want to take it.
I wish, and part of that wishing is taking action, right, and getting involved, is that our politicians would say, you know what, we're looking at the geopolitical landscape of what's going on, and we're gonna bring things back, right? I mean, we used to be so proud of made in the USA. It's like, all right,
Politicians can't do that.
I
They
just
can't. They have no power to do that. Besides, their corporate owners would. Oh, did I say that out loud? Their corporate sponsors. That doesn't sound much better. Um, would not like it because they would be trying to regulate corporations again, which we stopped doing in the 1980s. Which brings us back to power because in the
but it's
1980s,
job creation,
yep, it
which
is.
would help with housing, it would help with food insecurity,
And we're
it
going to
would
talk
help with
about that. We're going to talk about that with power in just a moment. But we deregulated power in the 80s. And when we deregulated power, it doesn't seem like anyone became responsible for upgrading the infrastructure because we haven't at all upgraded our infrastructure since it was basically put in the 1960s. Um, I will remind you, I don't know if you ever went to the house that I had on, I was living in a beach drive over in Port Orchard.
Mm-mm.
But I would look out my window. It was right next to Waterman Pier. I would look out my window, and there was a power pole across the road from my house right on the water, in the water. The power
Wow.
pole itself went straight down into the water. And I'm looking at this going, that is so wrong on every possible level. So, deregulation, nobody seems to want to upgrade the infrastructure. And they had an opportunity. I was working with a company called Microplanet, who was trying to work in the United States, and they ended up moving and becoming a Canadian company. They had a product in the early 2000s that was a computer that would fit on the side of your house. It would do a lot of different things. The first thing it would do is it would electronically send a signal to the power utility guy who comes by and via Wi-Fi and tell them what the usage of your house was. So that would have 5 to 7 years before they started having that on their meters, it would have done that for them. It also would have
Wow.
controlled as much power that went into your house, so you were only paying for the power you used and not the power that was shipped to your house, which was not
Mm.
done. It could also tell where an outage was within 300 meters. And the power companies opted not to invest in the technology because it cost them less on the short term to send crews out to find things, and they would have lost money because they're charging you for what's being sent to your house as opposed to what's being used by you. So
Would you
it all
mind?
comes down to money. Michael's right. It all comes down to money. How, they won't make investments in things that are far more efficient because it's really about money. So let's talk about that for a minute. So there are utilities, things we call utilities, that are publicly traded for profit corporations. And I'm going to stay on this subject for a few minutes. And then there are public utilities, which are service organizations that are basically managed by the people. Um, when you have for profit, they don't want to invest in anything because that costs them money. They want to use what they have as long as they possibly can. And if you look at the John Oliver episode on utilities, which there's a link in the YouTube video to that, you'll see some fairly interesting things. And you see some really horrific things done by utilities, all to save money and to make more money. PG&E was on the verge of bankruptcy because of the fire in Paradise, which was caused by lack of maintenance. Um, all kinds of things go wrong with for profit. And so let's take a look at that for just a second. And then I'm going to stop back. I'm going to step back for a second. I'm going to use a term called national security. We have a very different view of national security. And we think about national security as the government taking care of us. But how is it national security when our utility, Puget Sound Energy, is owned by a foreign entity? How is that
Mm.
national security when our utility is owned by a foreign entity?
Why would we even allow that?
Well, good question. How can we seriously talk about security when that's the case? You realize Fox News is owned by Rupert Murdoch, right? Rupert
Hmm.
Murdoch is an Australian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and if you watched a movie in from the '80s called Working Girl with Melanie Griffith and Harrison Ford, the whole premise of the movie was that back then we would not allow foreign ownership of media,
Hmm.
and now
It's all
it's
good.
it's all good.
Ooh, I got a lot of commentary on that,
Yeah,
but that's
so
not this episode.
that's not. We will have an episode on that. Trust me. So we're talking about power for all. We have, I think, covered the fact that we are at risk. We
Mhm.
have power outages, and the final thing I was talking about on this here is that in 2004 we had a power outage, and I just want to outline it. I read all 400 and some odd pages of the Department of Energy report on it. A tree in Ohio knocked down power lines because we don't have a cohesive utility connection across the United States, but lots of utilities using different softwares and having different trainings, and a lot of different people basically competing for the same space of money, even though they're kind of monopolies. We don't have a cohesive approach to power delivery to this country. And what happened is an alarm in one place was taken as something different in another place. And the outcome is that for 2 weeks, the entire Northeast was without power.
Mm.
50 million people were without power from Ohio all the way up through New York into Canada. And there's this report that comes out, but we did nothing to fix it. So I have to ask this question. Where were you when the lights went out? We pay a lot of money for power, and we do not have any guarantee that we will have it. It is not considered a right. It is not considered anything other than we are customers and they care about our wallet more than they care about providing services to us. And that is true of predominantly any for-profit corporation. But power and I talked about last time, food, power, food, water, these are things that we need to live. So maybe we need to sit down together and talk about this and look for different answers. And that is, by and large, what the Kitsap Resiliency Project's Power for All subproject is about. It is about coming together and looking at doing it differently. Now, one of the things that I talk about frequently is the fact that we have centralized power production here. Means that we have a coal plant, we have a dam, we have massive solar arrays in the middle of the desert or someplace, and we generate energy there and we send it here. And whenever you hear an argument about solar and all the rest of it, they talk about, well, you can't store the power from here and ship it to here, and it's not efficient. Okay. What Germany is doing is they're reprioritizing power to powering the house first, the community second, and the grid third. We prioritize grid, 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 grid.
Yeah.
And so, if you want solar in this country and you want to go with the net metering process, which is our government approved stamped way of expanding solar, which doesn't, you basically are pushed. You don't have to do this, but you are pushed to have your power grid tied, which means when you have solar panels on your roof and the grid goes down, you're as dark as your neighbor is for all the solar panels you have on your roof.
Really?
Yes, it takes an extra bunch of hoops to jump through to make your house be powered by the solar. And they will tell you there's a fire risk, they will tell you this, they will tell you that, but it's all to fall within the net metering where it pays you back for the investment you make. Now, the only way that, by my understanding, and if somebody knows better, please tell me I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, my understanding is that you have to be able to financially support the panels, meaning buy them yourself,
Right.
to qualify for the net metering finance program, which means we're back to rich white guys predominantly being able to do solar. And so the only reason you're not seeing solar panels on everybody's roof is that a lot of people understand it doesn't make any sense.
So how long does that power store up? Is the power lost if it doesn't go back to the grid or to the neighborhood?
Well, here's the laughable part. Most major utilities can't even measure the power that's coming from your house onto the grid.
Really?
Yeah, they are centralized in their focus. They measure things in gigawatts, not in megawatts.
I mean, it's just it's amazing that it wonder
It's
how
it,
we've made it
it's
this
not a very
far.
funny joke. It's a very not funny joke.
Send the
And
asteroid.
but we don't ask the next question, so we just accept it. We accept it. You'll see the theme here. We accept what we're given. So let's talk about what the future could bring. What a solution looks like. Because I promised that we would talk about solutions in this program.
All right, I'm ready for some solutions. Give me some
So
hope.
let's talk about a public utility. In our county, the public utility is predominantly Kitsap Public Utility District. And they do a lot of really cool things. Matter of fact, they own all of the fiber in Kitsap County. And they
Mm,
manage it, and they're looking at delivering. They do a lot of stuff with the back end and the infrastructure, but they're not really good with the front end stuff. And they're looking for partners to help them deliver internet to people's homes. But let's just imagine for a minute, put the imagination hat on for a second, and let's imagine that Kitsap Public Utility District, because people came together and decided they wanted something different, started looking at installing solar on people's roofs and microgrids in people's communities, and using, let's say, saltwater battery storage, so that that every roof is covered with solar. So no matter where the light is, you're collecting solar power, because you're no longer trying to maximize your investment, but you're actually trying to power the house in the neighborhood, in the community. So you put solar panels on everybody's roof, and you collect the solar, and it charges your house first, and then it goes to a central storage unit. So
Mm.
whatever's left over powers, let's say your neighbor doesn't have as much light, so he collects some from the main storage unit to keep his house moving. And then whatever's not used by everybody in the neighborhood flows to the grid.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, it seems pretty simple.
Well, that's what Germany's doing. And so solar is not the only answer. I mean, we can do wind. There's all kinds of things that we can do. But we have to get people having a conversation, and we have to get people to get beyond the "not in my backyard" attitude. We have to educate them and show them the benefit to them. And we do a piss poor job of that.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is a project where we have to have these conversations, so we can start having conversations with the KPUD. And you know that there's a fund in Washington State to do projects like this, that a couple of
Really?
years ago had $11 million in it.
Hmm.
Now, I
Uh,
have not answered the question about, the toxic products that are used in the solar panels. Well, we don't have an answer to that yet, but if we started expanding solar, it would become a supply and demand issue, and people would start actually spending money for innovation, and we might get farther along than we are with the piecemeal way we're doing it now. So let's start the process, create demand and need, and see what happens.
I like that idea. I think we may need to go to Olympia and start
We
having
could.
those conversations.
We could, but we actually need to start in our backyard talking to KPUD. But it'd be nice if we had a few hundred people that were interested in having that conversation, because that's how you get it moving.
So you're talking about the solution part of it. So I'm a NIMBY. What would you say to me to try to sell me on it? Like, what? How do I benefit from this?
Okay, so first of all, your power wouldn't go out because you're generating your own power. That's number
Okay.
one. So you have a level of security there. If you're a nationalist, I would say, and you're not supporting a foreign entity with your money, with your monthly payments. So that would be another one. I mean, you talk to people in the way that you meet them where they are, not where you are.
Mhm.
So there's lots of different arguments for it. Power security, not supporting a foreign entity, or foreign investment rather. You can talk about the fact that, okay, so now you don't have a variation in your cost, and you don't have to maintain the public utility KPUD would, in this case, again, it's an imaginary new KPUD.
Right, right.
Um, and I'm not promising anything for them, but they would maintain the solar panels, the microgrid, and the connections, and you would pay them a flat fee for infrastructure
Okay.
and support, as opposed to paying a growing power bill based on some plant somewhere you don't have anything control over and need. So, there's a lot of benefit to that. Now, I'm going to go back to, the first thing people will point out is, well, Jefferson County tried to do this, and they lost, and their people are paying twice as much money because, yeah, they are trying to become brokers going to Bonneville and competing with the 800-pound gorilla of PSE for
Really?
price, and the people have to pay more because they cannot get the price the PSE gets.
Right.
Okay, we're changing the rules. We're generating our own power. We're not trying to broker power coming from, Utah or Colorado or someplace else. We are generating our own power on our own roofs, in our own homes, in our own communities. So what we have to do is negotiate the infrastructure support that would support the utility in maintaining the infrastructure. And the utility is a nonprofit, not a for-profit organization. So they would minimize the profit. They can't have profit. So the money has to roll back into to expansion and support of their infrastructure.
So, toxic batteries aside, do you have any idea of how much energy we would generate if 70 or 80% of the homes had, solar panels on them? Because
Okay, so
it
you have
appears
to
like it'd be
change.
pretty massive.
You have to you have to mitigate some of the thinking around that. It won't be massive compared to a coal or natural gas plant because that's what they do. They generate massive
Mhm.
amounts of energy. But within the neighborhood, it would be a lot of energy. I did the math on mine, and I could come up with I think it was something like 33 kilowatts of power, which would power my house and three other homes in my neighborhood. And don't quote
Really?
me on that. I'm just saying this is what the numbers I was running, thinking about the amount of solar panels that we can put in.
Just on your house?
The house or in the end, put it in the backyard, put a few panels in the backyard.
Really?
There's a thing that there's a group I watch called Wonderful Life Off Grid. They're a couple in Tennessee or West Virginia that
Mhm.
built a house on a farm and they're like expanding. They put up initially, I think, 18 300-watt panels, and they expanded it to 26 because they expanded what they're. But they live life like everybody else. They have all electric home. They have electric appliances. They have all the stuff. They don't skimp on anything, and they're running 26 panels
26 panels.
times
So I'm just
300
wondering,
kilowatts.
earlier I was at Project Connect and PSE was there. And they have all these really great programs for folks that need help with their utilities and whatnot. And I just wonder, if we shifted our focus and where the money went and put these solar panels on low income homes and businesses and things of that nature, then you wouldn't need folks seeking out utility assistance because they would have it in abundance and it would feed even more areas. And that's one expense folks wouldn't have to worry about. And the fact that they're making people basically buy in, which is barrier to entry. Hey, you buy your solar panels, then you can buy in is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I would
Well,
love to have solar panels as a renter, where I mean, this spot is G2 prime, right? So
yeah,
I've got 3 deep freezers. I run the podcast out of here. You don't want to see my electric bill.
right.
You'll pass out. But that would be huge to generate, all of that electricity where I'm not paying $500 and $600 a month in an electric bill, and I'm also trying to do a public good on top of it.
Right.
So, it's like, man, no good deed goes unpunished.
Well, exactly so. So let's imagine a little bit more. Okay. Let's imagine that we talk to KPUD and they go, well, maybe this would be good, but let's see how we can make this work in a way that we can prove the concept. Because everybody wants to prove the concept. You and I've had this conversation lots and lots of times.
Oh yeah.
So let's say that we bring Habitat for Humanity on board, and they've got a
Mhm.
project that they're building, and we go to the state and we say, we're working with KPUD. We want to make this a standalone utility space to try it out. Can we get some of that money to work with KPUD to put solar panels on Habitat roofs and prove out the case that we could power these homes independently of the grid, but have grid support backup in case it fails?
Yeah, I mean, while you're talking, I'm thinking about, BHA and KCR, if they're building new construction and saying, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna put solar panels in because our folks that are on a subsidy, we're gonna end up paying their electricity likely. So now, that's an expense that we don't have, which means that we can use that to house other families."
And this is how you build a coalition to make it happen. But then
I
you
mean,
get
it seems so it's like Eureka.
yeah, but you'll get the pushback from PSE, and you'll get the pushback from the cities and the counties and the code people, because the code people mostly because they don't understand and it's something new and you have to show it to them before they'll adopt it. I'm not saying that they're against it. They just, matter of fact, when I talked about I was reviewing a project for St. Paul's Episcopal Church up on the hill,
Oh,
And they
hey.
asked me about power, solar power, and I did some research for them. And I called the city and I said, "So, what would be the restrictions here?" And I said, "What if we wanted to put up a wind turbine there because there's a lot of wind there?" And they
Mhm.
said, "We have no codes at all on that, so we would have to work with you to develop how we would do that, but we're open to it."
So, those that are listening in the chat, if you have any thoughts on, why we're not doing this, what we can say to try to overcome those objections.
I've said that 3 times in here. It said, "We have a lack of will." And you came back to me with, "But we don't know about it." Well, now you do.
Now I
So,
I just knocked my glasses off. I'm like, uh, I, I love our conversations because they're really exciting and I learn something every time. But when I hear something that really is like a fundamental change in how we live and the quality of life that we have, like that really pumps me up. This seems so obvious to me.
yeah, and food for all too. I mean, the next 3, all the way through 50 is going to be this every time. We're gonna be talking about the problem, we're gonna be talking about the solution. And all of the solutions require willpower, which means we have to talk to each other.
Mhm. I don't know. I'm at a loss of words. It seems obvious to me. Like, let's
So,
go, let's do it. Let's
uh,
take the money and put it where it needs to go.
and Rob just came in with, it is a perceived barrier to entry that people have, I believe, that we push this right way with the organizations like Marwan was mentioning. We could form a coalition. So and Rob, your timing is perfect because I was just going to challenge Marwan with bringing together a meeting of those organizations to discuss this.
I can do that. I can do that.
So if we do that, we can have the start of the conversation and then we can have something to bring people on board with. But remember, everybody wants somebody else to do it for them. But the fact is, we are where we are because nobody's going to do it for you. You have to show up.
Well,
Now,
and
do we say this every week? I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record.
no, I know it, and it really is an all of the above, solution. You can't just do the one thing. You have to do all things, and realize that whether you're a homeowner or a renter or wherever you fall, these things are going to save money, which means that there's going to be more resources to go into other places that you also care about. Get the boomers to do it. They have spare time.
Hey, I'm a boomer and I got zero spare time. Okay.
You're a boomer?
Yeah. Born in 57,
Oh man.
but I got no spare time. I mean, when I'm not doing this, I'm driving for G2 or I'm, working on everything else and trying to be a father. It's a lot of work.
They're cranking the car in the front.
Yeah. Yeah. To get that thing going. Yeah.
Man. 57. What was happening in 57?
I was being born. We were in the middle of the Cold War. Um, just coming out of Korea.
That's like almost 20 years before I was born.
Yeah.
You're way older than
It's 15 years before you were born because you just turned 50. Hey, it was all over Facebook.
was it?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't know because I lost my internet for a bunch of hours. So, as folks, as I do shows, if I did not respond to their birthday wishes, I didn't have internet. I lost my phone, and I wanted to ask you about that. So,
Yeah.
from an
Yeah. That's it.
was it 57 when the dinosaurs roamed the earth? From an emergency management standpoint, right? I had seen something on news which was a little unsettling, and right after that I was in the middle of trying to search to confirm from reputable sites because if I hear something that seems
You
like,
always have to look
I
for
don't
source
know, I
material.
want to check in a few different places, right, to verify it. And my internet went down. My internet went down. My cell phone didn't work. I dinked and dunked for hours till I finally went to bed, and it didn't come back on until this morning. And I'm like, man, I really feel isolated and cut off. So what do I do? In a lot of ways, I felt like it was worse than losing power.
So we will have that conversation soon, and when we talk about Project Loon.
Okay.
So yeah, emergency management is incredibly passive, underfunded, and not a lot of imagination. And when shit hits the fan, excuse the language, um, we're on our own. So I'd like to have more stuff in place so we aren't quite so bad off when we're on our own.
Yeah, that was the original draw for me to resilient ecosystems was the fact that I know that the time is coming that we're so ill prepared in so many different ways, right? The pandemic shows that, my physical health isn't great. Just the climate of everything, it's scary, right? And it's like, man, we gotta get ready. Your internet got cut off when you were looking up something.
All right. Unfortunately, I have to head out. We're already late today, and I've actually taking my daughter out, so I'm
Oh, nice.
gonna go do that. Um, so another episode.
Definitely another episode. This one, I like all of our episodes, but some I really just, that bulb. You can see the bulb right there.
Yep,
It's like bing. I just, man, how do we get other people to have that bulb go off and all come together and say, let's go, let's do this, let's make this, let's try it. Let's build a neighborhood, a cul-de-sac or something, create that proof of concept, and then say, okay, now let's scale this thing up.
yep,
It seems so easy.
it is. I mean, once we're there, but we have to get people to talk to each other and to learn about it. The reason we don't have those cars, which really pisses me off, because I really want one, and I've wanted one for 40 years. Talk about delayed gratification, is because nobody knew about it, and nobody had the willpower to push the companies to do it.
I like the idea of it. I hate driving. So the thought of being able to either go to sleep or get work done, that's my biggest thing. If I
Yeah,
could sit in the back with my computer and do emails
and
and take
and think
meetings.
about it. We're driving on wire, so that means we could have fiber and Wi-Fi to the cars while we're driving,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and maybe even charge the batteries in the cars while they're driving. We have all that technology now.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I mean, there's always challenges, but
I
yeah,
love driving
okay.
my car too. I hate driving, but I do like driving my car from time to time, and I'm a control freak, so I don't like roller coasters, so there's that.
Yeah, and I have nothing against you loving to drive your car. Okay? As long as you don't drive it thinking luck is skill.
You know what? For the snow and stuff, yeah, I would be more than happy to get into a pod, but I would like it to be built like the old cars, the nice steel frames and not
Yeah,
these aluminum foil.
the folding things. Yeah. And it's a challenge. Anyway, with that, I have to run. I look forward to next week when we're going to be talking about water.
All right. Hey, this was a great episode. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, apologies for the technology snafus. I'm actually using my secondary computer, so it's not just Comcast, but I've had a cascade failure on everything. So, woosah. But
So
this went a long way. Like, I feel I'm in such a good mood now, post podcast, than I was trying to get the podcast going. So, I feel great. So, I appreciate
yep.
you.
Thank you. Take care all, and I
All
will
right,
see you next
everyone.
week. All right.
For Mark, I'm Marwan. This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces. Check us out tonight for the CK School Board meeting, 5